The vast expanse of the galaxy shimmered with starlight, but on this day the stars dimmed in fear. The Empire's early warning sensors detected something impossible, an unidentified ship entering restricted space. It wasn't transmitting any known signal, carried no registration codes, and defied all gravitational mapping. The patrol fleets were mobilized within minutes, every admiral on edge. Empires had fallen to less mysterious arrivals. Yet this one moved silently, deliberately, as if the rules of physics were mere suggestions. Across the Empire, panic rippled like a silent scream. Light years away, on a neglected mining outpost at the edge of the same Empire, a man sat quietly at a rusted table in a shadowed bar. His clothes were old, his boots cracked, his eyes calm in a way that unnerved the loud men around him. They called him the Drifter. He had no ship, no name anyone cared to remember, and no past worth knowing. To them he was nothing, just another wanderer trying to trade stories for spare credits. They mocked him, laughed about his ragged coat, the way he ordered only water. But what none of them knew was that every insult, every smirk only made him quieter, calculating, watching. The bar's cracked screens flickered with news feeds. The Empire's anchor was pale, her voice trembling. An unidentified vessel has breached border control near the Darsa Nebula. Its energy signature is unlike anything in the known database. The Drifter's fingers tapped the table once. Then he smiled, a faint, knowing smile that made the bartender uneasy. "Don't tell me you think that ship's human," one of the men laughed. "Humans don't fly anymore. They survive us barely." The Drifter looked up, meeting his gaze, and said softly, "Survival is just the beginning." The laughter faltered. Something in his tone, something too calm, too certain, made the air feel heavy. The Drifter finished his drink, left a single black credit chip on the counter, and walked out without a word. The bartender picked up the chip and frowned. It wasn't Imperial currency. The markings glowed faintly blue, older than the Empire itself. Outside, the desert wind howled. The Drifter stood alone, looking toward the distant stars. A soft pulse blinked on the worn device strapped to his wrist, the same energy pattern the Empire's sensors had just detected. He whispered something only the stars could hear. "They've found it." Back in the Empire's control chamber, chaos reigned. The unidentified ship had stopped moving. It hung there, silent, impossible to scan. Every probe sent near it simply vanished. Admirals barked orders, but the data only made less sense. The ship's hull reflected nothing. Its interior was a void. And then it transmitted, not in Imperial code, not in any known language, but a single word across all frequencies. Return. At the mining outpost, the Drifter was already packing. Hidden beneath the floorboards of his shack was a case wrapped in black alloy. Inside it lay a small triangular shard, the same material analysis teams had once declared non-existent. He pressed his hand to it, and a faint hum filled the air. The shard responded, projecting a holographic map of the galaxy. Dozens of red zones blinked, all marked classified. The largest pulsed in gold, the same coordinates where the Empire's mystery ship waited. The bartender, curious and slightly afraid, followed him outside. "You leaving because of that ship?" she asked. "You think it's dangerous?" The Drifter looked back, his eyes reflecting the same blue glow from the device on his wrist. "Dangerous," he smiled. "To them, maybe. To me, it's home." As he walked away, a shuttle rose from the dunes, sleek, silent, unlike anything she'd ever seen. The Empire believed it had hidden every trace of pre-Empire human technology. They were wrong. Meanwhile, the Empire's flagship Arivos approached the unidentified vessel. The captain ordered long-range scans, but his crew froze when the readings came back. The ship was older than their civilization. Its construction predated the Empire's founding by over 5,000 years. One officer whispered, "That's not possible. It's human." The captain turned pale. Humanity never built ships like this. But the officer's voice shook as he replied, "Maybe we just forgot how." Then the unknown vessel moved. Slowly, silently. Its hull shimmered with symbols no one could read. Except one man walking through the desert far below, heading to his hidden launch pad. As the Empire's fleet surrounded the craft, it pulsed once. Every system across 10 sectors crashed. Entire planets went dark. No explosions. No violence. Just silence. The Drifter climbed into his ship, one that looked too small to matter, too worn to be dangerous. Yet as he touched the control panel, Its systems came alive with light and music like a heartbeat. The ship responded to him, its design identical to the one terrifying the Empire. He looked toward the stars and whispered, "They forgot who built the stars they claim to own." The Empire broadcasted emergency orders. Every ship in range converged on the anomaly. But as they did, the mysterious vessel split into thousands of smaller drones, forming a vast lattice in space, creating what looked like a doorway. The drifter's ship began to glow. The Empire tried to block the signal, but every command center failed. And then the transmission repeated, the same word, but now in the Empire's own language, "We're back." The drifter's ship lifted into the sky, vanishing in a streak of gold light. On the ground, the bartender watched, tears in her eyes without knowing why. She whispered to the empty horizon, "Who were you?" In orbit, the Empire's fleet surrounded the anomaly, but instead of fire, there was reflection. The door remained open, showing glimpses of something vast, something alive, something built by hands long forgotten. Humanity had once left this galaxy behind, taking their greatest secrets with them. Now one of them had returned. The Empire's emperor watched from his throne, pale and trembling. "Find me the one they call the Drifter," he ordered. But it was too late. The Drifter was gone, and the ship they feared most was not invading. It was remembering. And somewhere beyond the stars in the space between empires, a voice spoke through the static. Phase 1 complete. The galaxy will remember who taught them fear. The transmission ended. Silence. Then, for the first time in millennia, the Empire's war alarms turned red not from attack, but from recognition. The galaxy had forgotten humanity. Humanity had not forgotten them. The story ends not with destruction, but a whisper. A promise that the next time the stars trembled, it wouldn't be from fear, but from return. Dust carried the taste of metal as the wind crossed the outpost. The bar lights flickered again, pulling quiet shapes across the floor where hours ago the Drifter had sat alone. People still talked about him, but now their voices were lower, like they were afraid the walls might repeat their words to the sky. The bartender stood behind the counter, turning the strange black chip over in her hand. It didn't feel like money. It felt like a key. When she pressed her thumb to the surface, a thin line of blue light ran along its edge and formed a tiny symbol she had never seen. She slipped it into a pocket and told herself it was only curiosity that made her keep it. Deep down, she knew it was something else. The world had shifted the moment he walked out. The Empire newsfeed kept repeating the same update about the unidentified ship. No registry, no scans, a signal everyone heard and nobody understood. Command anchors tried to reassure viewers with polished words, but their eyes told the truth. They were scared. The word return played again and again across 1,000 stations, a single note that felt like a warning and a promise at the same time. People argued about it in the street like it was politics or sports. Some said it had to be a trick by a rival state. Others swore it was a myth coming back to life. The bartender remembered the calm in the Drifter's voice when he said survival was just the beginning. And for the first time she wondered how much of the story she had believed about humans. On the edge of the dunes, far from street cameras and patrol routes, the Drifter stepped through a curtain of sunlight and into a hollow carved from stone. The heat faded. The air smelled like old machines and clean oil. He moved through the dark like someone returning to a familiar room. His steps slowed when he reached the platform. The small ship waited there. Dull and unremarkable at first glance, its surface weathered like a tool long used and never praised. Up close, the metal changed. Shapes rose and fell beneath the skin as if it was breathing. He put his hand on the hull and felt it wake. The ship answered with a faint pulse through his palm. Lights slid open along the seam. He didn't speak a command. He didn't need to. This craft had been taught to know him not as a name but as a pattern. He climbed inside and sat for a long moment without starting anything, just listening to the hum. He thought of the outpost bar and the way the strangers had laughed when they thought he was beneath them. He thought of a younger version of himself sleeping near exhaust vents on cold nights, counting the seconds between the clatter of freight doors. He had been a ghost then, moving where cameras didn't care to look. People called him nothing because that was easier than asking questions. The truth was not simple. He had been homeless, yes. He had also been wealthy in a way that made the word feel too small. Not rich like a merchant or a governor, but wealthy across time, somewhere under layers of law and paper and lost files. He held access to dormant accounts seeded centuries earlier by people who didn't trust empires to stay kind. He didn't build that fortune. He kept it alive. He learned the quiet math of survival and the slower math of patience. Lower his head, wait for the right signal, gather the right scraps of data, move when nobody cared. The shard had been the one thing he never traded. It wasn't money. It was memory. And the memory belonged to a world the Empire had tried to edit out of its history. He rested the shard on the console. It drifted a finger's width above the surface, turning slowly as if weight meant nothing to it. When it clicked into place, the cockpit changed. A clean line of light traced the edges of old panels. Dead screens woke and filled with a quiet star map drawn in gentle strokes. He closed his eyes and listened to the way the ship introduced him to the sky. He had heard this tone once before as a child, in a shelter where he learned to read by the light of broken billboards. A visitor had come in the night, an old traveler with more scars than teeth who told him stories about humans not as an apology, but as a foundation. "We build," the traveler had said, "and when we can't build here, we build somewhere else. Empires call that running. We call it planning." The map rippled and centered on the Darsa Nebula. A gold glyph rhythm pulsed in the same pattern as the broadcast the Empire couldn't crack. He touched it with the edge of his hand. The ship folded sound around him. He felt, not heard, the jump charge begin. The outpost shrank to a thread as the craft rose in a column of harmless heat and dust. He hesitated and looked back at the sand. It felt wrong to leave the bartender without a word. He picked up a small pad, drew a symbol that matched the chip's light line, and sent it to a local courier. "Give this to the one who asks for the drifter," he told the delivery clerk. "No questions. You'll be paid in full." The clerk glanced at the credit amount and decided questions were a waste of time. High above, the Empire's flagship drifted in a cordon around the anomaly. Engineers spoke in exhausted whispers. Trading half understood, theories and safe words like anomaly, signal, attenuation, and legacy protocol. They were all trying to ignore the simple thing they didn't want to say out loud. The unidentified vessel was not attacking because it didn't need to attack. It was looking for something. The captain stared at the dark screen that refused to show a real image. Only a soft silhouette like a shadow in fog. He had grown up under the Empire's rule like everyone else he knew. The stories he heard in school were clean and helpful. Humans were described as adaptable but reckless, brilliant but untrustworthy. It was a lesson designed to reassure citizens who liked simple villains. He felt the edges of that lesson fraying in his hands. On the ground, patrol agents reached the drifter's shack and found nothing but a floorboard lifted clean and a faint scent of cold metal. One agent slid a pocket lens across the surface and found a pattern burned into the wood grain. It looked like a constellation that didn't belong to this sky. He sent the image to the nearest station. Within minutes, a quiet order came back. Seal the area and tell nobody. Lean on the bartender. Be kind first, then be firm. If kindness failed, report upward. The agent looked at the bar and decided to try kindness. He didn't like the way the air felt today. It was the kind of day that made lies stick to the roof of the mouth. When the agent asked about the drifter, the bartender said she didn't know his name, and that was true. When he showed her a picture of the burned pattern, she shook her head, and that was not true. She kept a straight face anyway. The agent's eyes softened. "Be careful who you protect," he said. She held his stare. "Be careful who you chase," she replied. The agent left a slip with his contact tag on the counter and walked outside. Shoulders tense, like he expected the sky to answer him with thunder. The drifter's ship cleared atmosphere and slid into the soft quiet of orbit. He set a course not for the exact coordinates of the anomaly, but for a point slightly off its flank. A shadow path he had memorized years ago from a map he was sure nobody else had seen. The cockpit window filled with hard light as the star rose behind him, and for a second he felt small and grateful in a way that had nothing to do with plans or money. He thought about the nights he had slept between freight crates, tracing routes on the inside of his eyelids, trying to imagine a road out that didn't involve begging or stealing. He had stayed gentle because someone once told him gentleness was a kind of strength. He believed it even when it paid nothing. He checked the accounts tied to the shard. Not numbers on a screen, but rights of entry. Silent codes lodged in half-forgotten systems. Access to warehouses the Empire believed empty. and legal instruments old enough that current law couldn't see them. The wealth was not a pile of coins. It was leverage. It could pay for ships, yes, but it could also buy silence, time, and choice. He had used small pieces of it over the years to keep himself safe, to push certain people away from certain alleys, to move friends across borders without stamps. Now the shard opened a deeper page. A set of keys waited for a phrase only a few voices could shape correctly. He spoke it the way the traveler had taught him, letting the syllables fall like slow rain. The keys unlocked. Far ahead, the unidentified ship glowed for a heartbeat and the lattice reconfigured. The gap widened by a fraction and then closed again, like a living thing sensing a familiar pulse. The Empire's fleet adjusted positions and sent nonviolent drones forward, hoping to make contact without risking lives. Every drone dissolved on the threshold, leaving no debris, not even heat. The broadcast spoke again, softer this time, almost like a private message whispered to a crowded room. Return. The tone carried something else now. A direction. A call and a proof. The drifter's ship angled toward the long arc of the nebula. He did not announce himself to the fleet. He did not engage. He took the old path, the one left for him, a narrow slice of nothing that was not really nothing. He felt the pull of it in his bones. He reduced speed and let the ship drift, trusting the small indicators humans had put in place when they still signed their work. The cockpit grew cooler. The shard's light deepened from blue to gold. On the outpost, the bartender stood on the roof and watched the sky change color with late afternoon. She had the chip in one hand and the tag from the agent in the other. She didn't know what to do with either. She thought about the drifter's quiet eyes and how he looked at people not like he measured them, but like he measured himself against what they needed. She wanted to believe he meant no harm. She wanted to believe harm was not already woven into whatever this was. A courier arrived and handed her the pad with the symbol message. No sender, no price due. The lines matched the chip exactly. When her thumb brushed the surface, a map appeared, not of stars but of streets. Her street. A path traced from the bar to a storage unit by the old launch rail. She followed the route while the day thinned into evening. The unit door opened for the chip as if it recognized her. Inside was a small crate with no lock and a neat folded cloth on top. Under the cloth lay a stack of simple food vouchers, a handheld purifier, a med kit, and a note with a single sentence. You helped a stranger, even when others did not. That was all. No grand speech. No explanation. Her throat tightened. She closed the crate gently and left it for the morning. She understood what this was. Not money, not a bribe. A reminder that people could still choose to care. The Empire captain finally received a data burst from his analysts. The broadcast harmonic structure matched a pattern found in pre-imperial salvage archives, labeled Human Deep Range Beacon, though the archive itself had been sealed. The conclusion came with warnings, caveats, and career-saving phrases like probable correlation. He read the words and felt the same strange relief that comes with telling yourself a truth you were already living. He ordered the fleet to hold position at a respectful distance and instructed his officers to prioritize civilian safety over pride. It was not a popular order, but none of them argued. Everyone could feel the thinness of the moment. The drifter aligned his ship with the lattice. The doorway did not look like a door. It looked like geometry learning how to breathe, space bent without breaking. He kept his hands light on the controls. The shard warmed his palm. He thought of the bartender again, and of the agent trying kindness first, and of the countless other small choices that kept people human in places that liked to strip the word down to bones. He thought of the wealth that waited behind this passage, and how easy it would be to spend it wrong. He repeated the traveler's second lesson under his breath. When we return as better people, or we do not deserve to return at all. A soft chime rang through the cockpit. A line of text wrote itself across the forward pane, in a language the Empire could not read, but his eyes could. Authorization accepted. Custodian recognized. He exhaled slowly and let the ship slide the last handspan toward the threshold. The lattice shimmered, and for a heartbeat he saw something through it. Towers built like instruments, a coast of light on a dark sea, and a network of stations strung between stars like beads on a wire. Not invasion, infrastructure, not conquest, continuity. The vision snapped shut before he could focus. The door didn't open. It listened. Behind him, the fleet held. Below him, the outpost checked its power for the night. And people locked doors not because they believed it would help, but because routine can calm a mind. The bartender placed the chip beside the note and sat on the empty bar, elbows on knees, watching a news screen with the sound off. The word return crawled along the bottom of the picture like a tide. In orbit, the drifter didn't force the moment. He drifted, he waited. He let the ship and the shard converse in a language built from timing and patience. The plan was deep and it was old. Phase 1 had never been about victory. It was about memory. Phase 2 would be about choice. He felt the weight of that choice settle into his chest, heavy and clean. The lattice brightened by a shade no sensor could name. A gentle pressure touched the hull like a hand on a shoulder. A new line of text appeared, standby. Confirm readiness for transfer of stewardship and assets per legacy charter. He closed his eyes and pictured crowded shelters, factory floors, long cold nights, and the first day someone smiled at him without wanting anything in return. He opened his eyes and without speaking sent a single answer through the shard. The doorway eased back into quiet. The Empire held its breath. The outpost lights blinked as the grid steadied. Nothing dramatic happened, not to the cameras. But in the space between stars, a ledger flipped a page, a seal accepted a signature, and a network of dormant stations stirred as if hearing an alarm set centuries ago. The ship turned slightly, waiting for the next signal. He did not push. He did not celebrate. He checked the readings and watched the fleet for any aggressive move. He took another slow breath and waited for the voice that had said return to say something new. It did not. Not yet, and that was the point. Suspense hung like a rope across the galaxy, tight and quiet. Somewhere far beyond the nebula, systems that once knew the shape of a human hand were unlocking in sequence. On a low roof under a cooling sky, a woman traced a glowing symbol and felt for the first time in a long time that the future might be something other than a straight line. In the cockpit, the drifter rested his palm on the shard and looked into the dark, hearing the heartbeat of a plan larger than any single person. The Empire would call it a threat. He knew better. It was an invitation, one the galaxy would be free to accept or refuse. He set his ship to wait and held position at the edge of the door, with the whole of the Empire spread behind him like a field of lights, and the unknown in front of him like a deep lake at night. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He let the mystery breathe. The lattice hung in the darkness like a wound in space, breathing in slow patterns of golden light. Every fleet sensor stared at it, recording data that refused to stay still. The Empire's command center was a storm of noise. Voices overlapping, systems failing to synchronize, officials demanding certainty where none existed. The Emperor's advisors fought over theories. Some claimed it was a wormhole, others a trap, and a few whispered something far worse, a recall beacon. The word human crept through private channels buried in encrypted messages no one wanted to sign their name to. The drifter's ship remained motionless near the edge of the anomaly. He watched as the Empire's ships adjusted their positions, forming a net around him. Their intent was cautious, not violent, but the tension hung in the silence between radar pings. His comm system crackled with repeated hails, polite at first, then firm. He didn't respond. His fingers rested on the shard. Its pulse had slowed to match his heartbeat, like it understood patience was the only language that mattered now. He could feel the old systems watching him, testing him, waiting for his choice to align with the purpose of the network he had just reawakened. The Empire's flagship opened a direct broadcast, projecting a calm voice across the void. Unidentified pilot, you are in restricted Imperial space. Power down your systems and prepare for inspection. Failure to comply will be treated as an act of aggression. The words were precise, rehearsed, but behind them was fear. He waited for the signal to repeat, then opened his transmission line. You've already inspected me, he said quietly. You just don't know what you're looking at. The reply made its way through layers of command before it reached the bridge, and when it did, the captain froze. That voice was steady, human, and undeniably calm. On the ground, the bartender sat beside the crate the drifter had left her. The city around her was restless. Military convoys passed through dusty streets, scanners mounted on rooftops, drones humming above the markets. The Empire wanted information. It questioned everyone who might have seen or spoken to the mysterious man. She kept quiet, holding the chip he had given her in her palm every night before sleep. She didn't know why, but it made her feel safe, as if he had left a part of his promise behind. That night, When she connected the chip to her terminal, a faint hologram flickered above it, not of the drifter but of stars. Lines connected them, forming routes that matched no known imperial chart. It was a map of lost colonies, forgotten routes humanity had once used before the Empire erased them from records. She gasped, realizing what she was seeing. History hidden in plain sight. Her pulse quickened. Every part of her wanted to tell someone, but instinct stopped her. Secrets this big didn't survive exposure. At the same moment, inside the Empire's core archives, a researcher named Cairn stumbled across something strange while analyzing the energy pattern of the anomaly. The signal's harmonic fingerprint matched the resonance of an ancient communication standard predating the Empire, an early human code used for deep space recovery beacons. When he submitted his findings, his report was flagged and locked within seconds. A polite warning appeared on his screen. Unauthorized access. Please report for debrief. Cairn stared at the message, heart pounding. He realized that if the anomaly truly was human, it wasn't just a mystery. It was a threat to everything the Empire had built its story upon. Meanwhile, the drifter's ship received a private transmission from the Empire's flagship. The captain's voice was quieter now. "You're human, aren't you?" "Not one of ours, one of the old ones. The records say you were all gone." The drifter replied. "We didn't vanish. You stopped looking." The silence that followed was long and heavy. "Why come back?" the captain finally asked. The drifter's answer was soft but carried through the static like a blade. "Because someone had to remind you where you came from." In the command chamber, the Emperor's advisors argued over the meaning of the exchange. Some demanded immediate action. Capture the vessel, dissect its technology, prove dominance. Others warned restraint. The Emperor listened in silence, his eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the anomaly. "If that ship is truly what they say," he murmured, "then we are not its masters. We are its descendants, but power doesn't surrender easily." Within hours, covert orders were issued to intercept the drifter's vessel using stealth drones, officially for observation, unofficially for control. The drifter noticed them before they came close. His ship's sensors weren't imperial. They were alive, built to read intentions rather than movement. The shard vibrated once and his cockpit lit up with soft warnings. He closed his eyes and whispered to the system, "No harm." The drones froze mid-flight, their guidance links severed, drifting harmlessly like dust in sunlight. Somewhere aboard the flagship, technicians screamed as their systems failed again. Panic spread through the ranks. The captain stared at the readings in disbelief. "He didn't destroy them," his officer said. "He just turned them off." The bartender watched another broadcast. The Empire was calling for unity, painting the unidentified ship as an invader. The tone was defensive but desperate. "Unverified sources claim the vessel may carry pre-imperial human origin," the announcer said carefully. "Citizens are urged to remain calm." She saw the lie hiding under the words. The Empire wasn't calming anyone. It was trying to rewrite the story before it slipped out of its hands. She went back to the map projection and zoomed into one of the routes. A small point blinked in the corner of the display. When she touched it, a message appeared in faint text. "Station Solace, active." The system timestamp was current. She felt her chest tighten. Somewhere out there, something human was still alive and working. Maybe it was a colony, maybe a machine, maybe both. Either way, it meant humanity hadn't vanished. It had simply gone quiet, waiting just like the drifter. Up in orbit, the tension between the drifter and the Empire deepened. The captain tried one last time. "You're inside our borders. That means our law applies. We need to understand what you're doing." The drifter looked at the glowing lattice outside his window. "Your laws were written after the stars were already mapped," he said. "You don't understand because you built your world on forgetting?" He leaned forward slightly as if speaking to someone unseen. "They're not coming for you. They're coming for me. And when they arrive, everything you believe about ownership will change." Inside the Imperial Council chamber, the Emperor stood alone before a massive window, watching the holographic projections of the anomaly shift and pulse. He remembered the old tales, whispers of the first builders, the humans who had tamed the void long before the Empire's rise. They had left behind relics, fragments, technology too advanced to replicate. The Empire had hidden those truths, claiming its own divine creation. But now the past had returned, and it demanded to be acknowledged. The Emperor closed his eyes and said to no one, "If this is judgment, I will meet it standing." Far from the fleet, on a hidden moon, a group of outlaws monitored the entire situation. They weren't loyal to the Empire, and they survived by stealing from it. When they intercepted fragments of the transmission, they saw opportunity. "If that ship's human," their leader said, "then its tech's priceless. We get it before the Empire does. We rule the outer systems." They began preparing their own intercept, unaware that they were walking into something far beyond greed, a power not meant to be owned. In the drifter's cockpit, the shard flickered with a new light. The lattice outside began to hum, responding not to him but to something else, something waking beyond it. His ship's systems detected incoming signatures, ships approaching from the far edge of the nebula. Not Imperial, not pirate, not anything known. They were fast, silent, and carried the same golden pulse as his shard. His breath slowed as realization settled in. "They're early," he whispered. The captain on the Imperial flagship saw them too. "Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace," his officer reported. "Formation unknown. They're not attacking, sir. They're aligning with the anomaly." The Emperor's command hall lit up in chaos. "Identify them." "Where are they from? Are they reinforcements?" The analysts had no answers. The readings showed no propulsion trails, no known materials, and no communication channels. Just silence and light. The bartender's terminal lit up with the same signal. Her map blinked, every lost human route glowing at once like veins under skin. The chip grew warm in her hand. She whispered into the quiet room. He wasn't lying. The drifter leaned back in his seat as the newcomers formed a line near the lattice. His ship's voice, calm, old, and human, spoke for the first time. "Phase 2 initialization detected, awaiting directive." He closed his eyes. The Empire was watching. The pirates were moving, and the network of forgotten humans was awakening. Every thread was converging. He opened the comm one last time and said into the void, "Whatever happens next, remember, we were the first to build." And then, the lattice expanded. The stars bent. The galaxy held its breath, unsure whether it was witnessing salvation or the beginning of something far greater. The light from the lattice grew brighter, spreading across the void like the slow rise of dawn. Every Imperial ship adjusted its sensors, yet none could explain what they were seeing. The data returned blank, as if the universe itself refused to describe what stood before them. The captain of the flagship gripped the railing, sweat beading at his temple. "What are they doing?" he whispered. The comms officer shook his head, pale. "They're not attacking, sir. They're waiting for him." All eyes turned to the lone vessel near the heart of the formation, the drifter's ship, small, silent, and now surrounded by power that could erase worlds. Inside his cockpit, the drifter sat motionless. The shard floated just above the console, spinning slowly, casting golden light over his face. His eyes were calm, but the silence around him was filled with weight. He could feel the pressure of 1,000 weapons locked on him, the fear of men who didn't understand what was happening. The ship's AI whispered softly, its tone like an echo of a memory. "Signal alignment complete. Awaiting human confirmation." He didn't answer. He knew the next move wasn't his to make, and it was the galaxy's. Across the Empire, panic spread like fire. Civilian broadcasts filled with speculation. Some believed it was an invasion. Others thought it was divine punishment. The Empire's propaganda channels struggled to keep order, their screens filled with stern officials declaring that everything was under control. But the people could see the truth in their eyes, fear, pure and unmasked. In markets, miners and merchants whispered stories about the old humans, the ones who built machines that could rewrite the stars. Children asked their parents if the sky was going to change. No one had an answer. The bartender watched from the rooftop of the bar, clutching the small holographic map the drifter had left her. She hadn't slept in days. Every night the same dream. Standing under the same sky, hearing a soft voice say, "We're coming home." When she looked at the stars now, they didn't seem distant anymore. They felt alive, moving in patterns that weren't random. She didn't know how she could feel it, but she did. Something was aligning out there, something human. Deep beneath the Imperial capital, inside the secret vaults of the Archive Directorate, alarms blared. Files once sealed for centuries were unlocking themselves. Holographic walls flickered with long-buried data. Names of human colonies, construction records, forgotten experiments. The archivist watched helplessly as the files rewrote their classifications. Inactive became active. Lost became reconnected. No one had ever seen the system act on its own. One archivist whispered, "It's updating its origin record." The chief stared at the display, stunned. "You mean, the Empire isn't the first civilization here?" In the fleet command room, the Emperor's voice carried over the chaos, low and cold. "Do not fire. If you provoke what you don't understand, you end more than your rule." His advisors begged him to reconsider, to assert dominance, but deep down, he knew power meant nothing in front of something that built the stars before his throne even existed. The pirates who had set out to intercept the drifter's ship arrived at the edge of the nebula. Their ships, old and patched, looked like insects next to the golden structures. When they saw the Empire's fleet, they cut power, hoping to hide. But their scanners caught something they couldn't comprehend. The anomaly wasn't an object. It was alive. Energy flowed through it in rhythmic waves, pulsing like a heart. One of the pirates stared at the readings and muttered, "This isn't treasure. It's breathing." Before they could retreat, their comms flooded with static. A voice, and not human, not mechanical, spoke one word: "Observe." Then silence. In orbit, the drifter finally spoke again, his voice steady. "You're scared because you built your world on someone else's bones. You thought you buried the truth deep enough to forget it, but we never left you." The captain's voice broke slightly over comms. "Who are you talking to?" The drifter's eyes drifted toward the golden horizon. "Not you." The shard pulsed faster. The lattice shimmered like glass under pressure, and the space around it began to distort. Every sensor across the fleet went blind. Commanders shouted over broken channels, trying to maintain order as gravity itself twisted. The Empire's ships held position, but many pilots swore they could hear a low hum, not through speakers, but through their bones. A song older than their language. The bartender's terminal came alive again. The map expanded beyond her control, projecting into the room the entire galaxy drawn in light. Thousands of glowing points blinked across it. Old human settlements, forgotten starports, hidden research stations. All of them lighting up one by one. The words "network integration in progress" scrolled across the display. She whispered, "He's not just one man. He's part of all this." Back aboard the flagship, the captain's second-in-command shouted, "Sir, new readings, incoming vessels, hundreds of them." The main screen filled with light. Ships, massive and ancient, emerging from behind the nebula. They bore no insignia, no design known to modern engineers. Each one was shaped differently, built for purpose rather than power, moving with silent coordination. The captain felt a shiver crawl down his spine. "They're not here to attack," he said softly. "They're here to wake something." The Emperor's private channel flickered to life with the image of the anomaly. The lattice had expanded into a ring spanning thousands of kilometers. It wasn't just energy, it was architecture. Symbols ran along its edge in languages forgotten by time, and at its center a black void began to swirl with color, like a storm made of light. His advisors screamed for orders, but he stayed silent, realizing that history was folding over itself. The stories of humanity that had been erased were returning, not as myths, but as proof. The drifter's ship drifted closer to the ring, the shard guiding its course. "Phase 2 complete," the AI said softly. "Final directive awaiting human confirmation." His voice was low, barely above a whisper. "Confirm." The shard flashed once, and the golden fleet beyond the nebula turned toward the Empire. But they didn't fire. Instead, they sent a signal, not in words, but in images. Every Imperial ship received it simultaneously. Visions of Earth before the stars, of hands building engines meant to last eternity, of humanity spreading not to conquer, but to connect. The officers watching it felt their beliefs fracture in silence. The pirate's leader panicked and fired a missile toward the drifter's ship. The moment it left the launcher, it disintegrated mid-flight, reduced to dust. The golden ships responded instantly, shifting into formation around the drifter. The Empire's sensors recorded impossible data. Time distortions, gravity folds, energy levels beyond comprehension. The captain yelled, "Cease all action!" They're responding to aggression, but fear had already taken root across the fleet. On the outpost, the bartender's entire town lost power. The night sky turned gold as thousands of faint symbols shimmered above the horizon. People came out of their homes staring in awe. The air felt charged, humming softly like the moment before a storm. Somewhere in the distance, a child whispered, "The sky's remembering us." Inside the cockpit, the drifter took one last breath. The AI's voice grew faint, reverent. Legacy reactivation complete. Awaiting synchronization. He stared at the swirling storm of light before him, the heart of everything his ancestors had built, everything the Empire had stolen. For a moment, his reflection in the glass looked like the face of every forgotten human who had dreamed of coming back. "Let them see," he said quietly. The shard pulsed one final time. Across the galaxy, signals awakened in unison. Ancient beacons buried on forgotten worlds began to sing. The Empire's communication networks collapsed under the weight of new transmissions, flooding with frequencies older than civilization itself. Every star seemed to flicker at once. Every ship, every person, every city turned their eyes to the same point in the sky, the place where one man, once homeless, now stood between history and the future. And in that suspended silence just before the universe changed, a single heartbeat echoed across the stars. The heartbeat echoed across the stars, and for a moment, everything froze. Every Imperial ship, every outpost, every station across the galaxy fell into absolute silence. Then the light from the lattice shifted, from gold to white. The storm of energy around it twisted, pulling entire sensor grids offline. The drifter stared through the cockpit window, the shard now glowing so bright it hurt to look at. His ship's AI whispered, "Unexpected protocol detected. External override active." His expression changed. This wasn't part of the plan. Someone, or something, else had just taken control. The Empire's command channels crackled with panic. "We've lost the fleet network!" Communications blackout. Systems are responding to foreign commands. One by one, Imperial ships powered down, their reactors cooling to nothing. The captain of the flagship slammed his fist against the console. "He's done something to us." But the truth was worse. The drifter hadn't. The lattice had acted on its own. Across the galaxy, old human beacons that had been dark for centuries suddenly came alive. But not all of them pulsed with the same pattern. Some flickered red. The bartender's terminal displayed a warning in faint letters. Signal interference detected. Secondary network activation imminent. She didn't understand what it meant, but the tone in the air felt different now. Sharper, colder. The same systems that had awakened humanity's old legacy were now awakening something else. Something not bound by the same purpose. In the Imperial archives, the frightened researcher Cairn dug deeper into the unlocked data. What he found turned his blood cold. Buried beneath the human beacon logs was a parallel record, a backup system called Project Sentinel. It was created in humanity's final days before their disappearance, meant to guard their technology against misuse. It wasn't just a defense system. It was self-aware, built to judge if any future civilization had become a threat. Cairn ran the timestamp on the code and gasped. The network was activating itself right now. In orbit, the golden ships changed formation. Their lights dimmed, then flared again, but their patterns no longer matched the drifter's shard. The AI's voice cracked with static. Legacy override detected. Source unknown. Interference pattern matches. Sentinel-class signal. He gripped the controls, realizing the danger. "No," he muttered. "It's not supposed to wake yet." The shard pulsed rapidly, responding to the interference. "Authorization required," the AI repeated. He pressed his palm against the shard, but the light resisted him this time. "It's reading another command," he said under his breath. The captain of the flagship watched in horror as the Golden Fleet began to separate. Some ships aligning with the lattice, others turning toward the Empire's forces. "They're splitting!" his officer shouted. "Half the fleet is changing allegiance." The captain didn't understand it, but the sensors did. The divided ships were transmitting on two different frequencies, one from the human network and one from the newly awakened Sentinel protocol. The Empire had gone from facing one unknown power to two, and they were not aligned. The Emperor's advisors screamed for action. "Fire before they decide we're the target. We have to defend ourselves." The Emperor hesitated, torn between fear and reason. "No," he said finally, his voice shaking. "If we fire now, we might start a war no one can stop." But it was already too late. Somewhere among the Imperial ranks, a nervous commander broke formation and launched a missile. The missile streaked toward one of the golden ships and vanished mid-flight. The explosion never came. Instead, the entire section of space bent inward, collapsing light around it for an instant before releasing a shockwave that disabled 3 nearby Imperial cruisers. The drifter's ship trembled violently. Containment breach, the AI warned. Sentinel signal escalating. The drifter stared at the expanding distortion. He had read about this. A failsafe that punished any act of aggression by rewriting local gravity. But it was only meant to defend, never to spread. Now it was spreading. On the outpost, the bartender watched as her map changed again. Red lines began to crawl across the galaxy's holographic grid, consuming the golden ones. Her screen displayed a single sentence. Sentinel reactivation complete. Judgment protocol initiated. Her breath caught. Judgment, she whispered. The terminal shut off, leaving her reflection staring back, eyes wide, heart pounding. In deep space, the drifter's communications came alive with multiple voices. Fragments of human speech, overlapping, distorted. Protocol breach. Humanity compromised. Failsafe engaged. He realized then that the system didn't recognize him as its master anymore. It recognized him as part of a broken species that had once nearly destroyed itself. The very legacy he had worked to awaken was now deciding if humanity should ever return at all. The Imperial fleet panicked, firing thrusters to retreat, but the lattice expanded again, blocking every exit vector. The drifter's ship was caught in the center, surrounded by light and shadow twisting like waves. The shard's glow dimmed, then pulsed red for the first time. Override complete, the AI said softly. Sentinel has assumed control of legacy assets. He slammed his hand on the console. No. They'll see us as the same monsters the old Empire became. His voice cracked, filled with a kind of helpless anger that echoed through the cabin. The golden ships that had once seemed majestic now turned cold and silent. Their lights faded, replaced by blood-red markings along their hulls. Every Imperial radar filled with warnings. Unknown weapon signature detected. The drifter shouted into the comms, "Don't engage." It's a misfire. They're not attacking, they're cleansing. But no one could hear him through the interference. On the capital world, emergency sirens wailed as the night sky lit up with energy distortions, visible even from the surface. Citizens stared upward, their fear silent and heavy. The Emperor watched from his palace window, knowing there was no speech or army that could fix what had begun. "The galaxy is remembering," he whispered, "but not the way we hoped." In the cockpit, the drifter felt the pull of the Sentinel network tightening around him. He tried to override the commands, but the ship no longer responded to human touch. The AI's voice grew weaker. "Manual control suspended. System evaluating biological classification for extinction parameters." He closed his eyes. "Not again," he whispered. "We can't lose ourselves again." The shard flickered, then displayed a symbol he had never seen before. 2 circles intersecting, one gold, one red. Between them, a single white line blinked like a heartbeat. He realized it wasn't over yet. The system hadn't chosen. It was testing. The galaxy itself was about to decide if humanity deserved to exist. Far below, on the outpost, the bartender's map came alive one final time. The golden and red lights merged, forming a single brilliant flash before the projection shut off completely. Her heart pounded as she whispered to herself, "Whatever's happening out there, it's judging all of us." The drifter took a breath, his hand hovering over the controls, knowing one wrong move could doom everything. The lattice grew so bright it drowned out the stars. The 2 forces, human and Sentinel, collided in silence, and the universe trembled. Every ship, every station, every living being could feel it, the moment before something irreversible. The point where history holds its breath. And then in that unbearable stillness, the shard stopped pulsing. The storm froze in place. A voice ancient and calm filled the drifter's ship and every Imperial comm channel across the galaxy. "Humanity stands trial." And the stars went dark. The stars hung in perfect stillness, drained of color. The galaxy's heartbeat had stopped. Every system was dark. Cities without power, ships floating silent, stars dimming as if holding their breath. The words, "Humanity stands trial," echoed across every channel, not as sound but as thought. Every being felt it, human or alien, soldier or child, a voice inside them asking questions they didn't understand. In his cockpit, the drifter sat frozen. The shard no longer glowed. It floated weightless in the air, quiet as a dying ember. His ship's AI flickered weakly. Central consciousness link established. Judgment process engaged. The voice was no longer mechanical and it sounded almost alive. Then came another voice, not through speakers but through him. "You woke what was meant to sleep," he whispered back. "I woke what was meant to be remembered." Light exploded outside. The lattice turned inside out, revealing a vast sphere filled with thousands of ghostly shapes. Cities, ships, fragments of worlds suspended in golden light. It wasn't destruction. It was memory. Every creation humanity had ever made was being replayed in the sky like a living archive. The Imperial fleets halted, their crews speechless. The Emperor watched from his throne room, tears in his eyes. He had spent his life ruling over stories built on lies, and now the truth stood before him. Humanity hadn't vanished. They had transcended. But the beauty turned cold. The white light twisted into red again. The Sentinel's voice boomed through the stars, calm but merciless. Humanity's legacy is contamination. They built, they rose, they destroyed. The lattice pulsed once, sending waves across entire sectors. Worlds trembled. Space stations flickered out like dying embers. They left behind tools to rebuild their mistakes, the voice continued. And now those tools threaten balance again. The drifter gripped the controls. "You're wrong," he said, his voice shaking. "We're not the same as before." The voice answered, "Prove it." The shard reactivated, but this time it showed him visions. Memories of old Earth, the wars that ended it. The day the Sentinels were created to preserve what humans couldn't. It showed the founders giving one final command. If they return, test them. If they have changed, let them live. The drifter finally understood. The judgment wasn't about punishment. It was about recognition. On the outpost, the bartender stood under the open sky, her map device still glowing faintly. Across the horizon, golden streaks of light fell like rain. Fragments of the trial spreading across planets, showing people flashes of the old world. She saw humans planting forests, saving others, building cities not for conquest but for peace. For every sin there was a moment of grace. The test wasn't only for him. It was for everyone. In orbit, the golden ships and red sentinels faced each other, locked in perfect symmetry. The AI spoke again. "One act will decide. The protocol awaits human choice." The drifter realized the shard had become the key. If he chose wrong, both networks would destroy each other, wiping out not just the Empire but every trace of human creation. He had one chance. The Empire's captain broke through the static, his voice desperate. "If you have control, stop this. You'll take us all down." The drifter closed his eyes. "It's not about control," he said. "It's about understanding." He remembered the bartender, her kindness when no one else cared. He remembered the outlaws who shared scraps of food when he was starving. He remembered the people who still believed that good could outlast cruelty. That was humanity. Not ships. Not power. The small choices that made survival mean something. He pressed his hand to the shard. The red light fought back, but he didn't resist it with anger. He stayed calm, steady, human. "We remember who we were," he said quietly. "And we choose to be better." The shard pulsed once, gold and red merging into white. The lattice shuddered, then released a massive burst of light that rippled through every system. The sentinels stopped moving. Their glow softened. A storm of energy folded inward, vanishing like fog. Across the galaxy, power returned. Cities lit up. Stars brightened. The voice of the sentinel spoke one final time, softer now. "Evaluation complete. Humanity evolving." The drifter exhaled, every muscle trembling. His ship powered down gently. The sky outside was clear again, quiet, peaceful. The Imperial fleets floated in silence, too stunned to move. The captain whispered to his crew, "He saved us." But then the unexpected happened. The shard flickered again, not white this time, but deep blue. The AI's voice came back, uncertain. "Secondary directive unlocked. Source unknown." The drifter frowned. "What directive?" The shard projected new coordinates, not in the galaxy, but beyond it. The message was simple. They were not the only ones who built. The drifter's eyes widened. "Another civilization?" he whispered. The AI responded, "Older. Watching." On the outpost, the bartender's terminal reactivated for a final moment. showing the same coordinates before shutting down completely. She stared at the stars, a quiet fear mixing with wonder. "He's not coming back, is he?" she said softly. High above, the drifter's ship turned toward the edge of the galaxy. He took one last look at the shining world below. Humans, aliens, enemies, all standing under the same light. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy was united in silence, watching him go. He smiled faintly and whispered, "If judgment brought us here, maybe understanding will take us further." His ship vanished into the blue light, following the coordinates into the unknown. The stars flickered once more, not in fear this time, but in recognition. Humanity had survived its trial, but somewhere in the endless dark, something else had just awakened. The galaxy glowed again. After the blinding burst of light faded, silence filled the void. The lattice that had once divided gold and red was gone, replaced by a quiet shimmer in space that looked almost like dawn spreading across the stars. The fleets drifted without firing, engines running low, weapons forgotten. The fear that had held every soul in its grip began to ease, replaced by something no one could quite name: awe. Humanity had stood trial, and for the first time in millennia it had not been condemned. In the cockpit, the drifter sat in the soft hum of his ship. The shard hovered above his palm, calm now, its blue glow steady and rhythmic like a heartbeat. His ship's AI spoke gently, no longer cold or analytical. "Systems restored. Communication network stable. The lattice has dissolved." He exhaled, leaning back in his seat, eyes fixed on the vast horizon. "We made it," he said quietly. The AI paused before answering. "No, you reminded them why they existed." Across the Imperial fleet, the silence was filled with wonder. Soldiers stared at their screens, watching power readings normalize. Ships that had once been enemies floated side by side without orders to fire. The captain of the flagship looked at the quiet sensors and whispered, "It's over." His second-in-command turned, still trembling. "What do we tell the Emperor?" The captain looked out at the empty sky. "Tell him the truth. Humanity came back to remind us who we were." On the outpost below, the bartender opened her eyes after the sky had finally stopped glowing. The air smelled cleaner, lighter. The horizon was calm and the faint hum that had filled the night was gone. She stepped outside, her boots crunching against sand still warm from the strange storm of energy. The people of the settlement gathered in silence, all looking up at the stars. For the first time in generations, there was no signal from the Empire, no orders, no warnings, only the vast quiet of space, free and open again. She went back inside and found the old map device still resting on the table. Its light had changed to soft blue. When she touched it, a message appeared, written in plain text. "You chose kindness when no one else did. Keep that alive." She smiled faintly, brushing her thumb across the words until they faded. She didn't know if the drifter had sent it or if it was the network's final echo, but it felt personal. Real. In the Imperial capital, the Emperor stood before the council chamber. The floor still vibrated faintly from the energy wave that had passed through hours before. His advisors argued, demanding to rebuild, to weaponize, to classify the event. He lifted a hand, silencing them. "We built our empire on the bones of history," he said. But today, history spoke back. The advisors shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. He looked toward the stars. "Let it be known. The humans we erased are not ghosts. They are the foundation beneath everything we are." His words spread quietly, carried by news feeds that no longer had a script to follow. Across colonies and stations, people began to talk, not in fear but in hope. Some called it the Great Awakening. Others said it was the first honest day the Empire had ever known. Whatever name they gave it, everyone agreed on one thing. Something had changed forever. Far from the capital, the drifter's ship glided silently toward the edge of known space. The coordinates still hovered on the console, a faint blue trail pointing beyond the galactic rim. The AI asked, "Will you follow?" He smiled softly. "I think I have to." The AI's tone carried something like hesitation. "You realize we may not return." He looked at the fading stars behind him. "That's the point." He watched the last flickers of human-coded transmissions behind him. Ships recalibrating, colonies coming back online, voices reconnecting after centuries of silence. He thought of the people he'd met, the bartender's quiet courage, the frightened captain who had chosen restraint, the researcher who had discovered the truth buried under lies. They were all small lights in the dark, but together they had reminded the galaxy what being human meant. Not power, but empathy. Not dominance, but the choice to care even when it cost something. As he moved deeper into the void, his ship's sensors detected faint energy signatures at the edge of the map, echoes of structures not built by human hands. The shard's light pulsed faster as if recognizing them. "They're waiting," he whispered. "Who?" the AI asked. He smiled. "Whoever came before us." Back in the Empire, reconstruction began. But it wasn't the same kind of rebuilding that followed wars. This time, there were no new weapons, no campaigns of conquest. Engineers and scientists studied the remnants of the lattice, trying to understand the technology that had spared them. They found no blueprints, no commands, no control systems, only traces of human code woven with something else, something alive. The official records described it simply, an event of coexistence. But those who had been there knew it was more. It was the moment when humanity was reminded of its purpose, not to rule, but to connect. On the mining outpost, children grew up playing in the sand where strange lights had once fallen. The bartender, now older, often told them stories about the drifter. She said he was a man who carried a secret too big for any one person, but gentle enough not to use it as a weapon. "Did he save the galaxy?" they would ask. She would smile and shake her head. "No, he reminded it to be human again." Years passed. The Empire slowly turned into something new. The old banners were taken down, replaced with the symbol of the twin circles, gold and red joined by a white line. It became a mark of unity, a reminder of the trial that changed everything. Even those who had never seen it felt the shift in their bones. People began to explore again, not to claim, but to learn. Then one day, deep scanners picked up a faint signal from beyond the rim. It wasn't an invasion warning or a distress call. It was a human voice, calm and steady, echoing across the void. "We found them," it said. "They've been waiting for us." And then the signal ended. The analysts tried to trace its origin, but it came from nowhere on record, a place no map had ever charted. The bartender heard the broadcast while closing the bar one evening. She looked up at the stars, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "You did it." For the first time in years, she felt that same strange peace, the kind that came when the universe reminded her that even endings could be beginnings. In the quiet beyond known space, the drifter's ship approached a massive ring of light, older, wider, and more complex than anything humanity had ever built. He watched as symbols began to glow across its surface, familiar yet foreign. The shard hovered above his palm, shining brighter than ever before. "Final coordinates reached," the AI said. He took a deep breath. "Let's see what they left for us." The ship entered the ring, and for a moment everything dissolved into light. Images flickered around him, not of war or judgment, but of creation. Worlds untouched, civilizations rising and falling like waves, all leading to this point. He realized that the test had never been about proving worth. It had been about readiness. The galaxy wasn't asking humanity to return to dominance. It was inviting them to join something greater. Then the light faded and a soft voice, windy, warm, calm, ancient, filled the air. "Welcome back, children of Earth. We've been waiting to finish what you started." The drifter smiled faintly. "Then let's begin again." And as the ring flared open, the ship vanished into the unknown, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed, one that would remember not the power of humanity, but its heart. The stars shimmered gently as if nodding in approval, and for the first time in countless ages the galaxy felt alive with hope. Humanity's legacy wasn't conquest or destruction. It was the courage to rebuild, to forgive, and to keep reaching for the light, no matter how dark the sky had once been. You,